The low growl rumbled from deep in the Belgian Malinois' throat, cutting through the pre-dawn darkness of forward operating base Kandahar at 4:30 a.m. Ryder, a military working dog with 4 years of combat experience, stood rigid as a statue, eyes locked on the patrol route ahead. But Lieutenant Silas Morrison only shook his head with visible irritation. "Keep the dog quiet, Fletcher," Morrison said coldly, not bothering to turn around. "We've done this 200 times without a babysitter." Behind him, Seven Seals chuckled. Petty Officer Hugo Bennett, call sign Hammer, even shook his head with disgust. "Support personnel," he muttered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. "Why are we dragging them along?" Willow Fletcher, a 26-year-old K9 handler standing 5'4" in an oversized uniform, tightened her grip on the leash but said nothing. She'd learned to stay silent after 2 weeks working with this team. Every time she opened her mouth, they found another reason to dismiss her. Ryder growled again, more insistent. Something was wrong. She could feel it through the tension in the leash, through the way the dog shifted his weight. 4 years of training and combat together had taught her to trust these instincts. "Sir," Willow said quietly, "Ryder's detecting something. We should—" "Do not interfere with combat decisions," Morrison cut her off, voice hard as steel. "That's an order." But in the next 20 minutes, everything would change. What they were about to discover about the small woman standing in the shadows would alter everything they thought they knew. And by then, ignoring Ryder's warning would become the deadliest mistake of their careers. Morrison waved his hand forward, and the patrol began moving into position. The 8-man SEAL team fell into practiced formation. Morrison at point, Hugo and Chief Warrant Officer Gaston Reed on flanks, Sergeant Caleb Ford in the middle with medical gear, and 3 others spread tactically. Willow and Ryder brought up the rear, as always, the last, the forgotten. The base command center hummed with quiet activity as Captain Audrey Shaw watched the monitors, her expression tight with concern. She'd been a K9 handler herself, years ago, before moving up through command. She knew what it meant when a dog like Ryder signaled danger, but she also knew Morrison's reputation. Brilliant tactician, decorated operator, absolutely convinced of his own infallibility. Team 1 departing Grid 7 at 04:45, Specialist Liam Brooks reported from his communications station, glancing nervously at Shaw. He had overheard Morrison's dismissive tone on the radio, and it made him uncomfortable. Shaw nodded, but said nothing. She had no direct authority to override Morrison's tactical decisions in the field. All she could do was watch. The patrol moved through the compound gates into the uncertain darkness beyond. Kandahar province, at this hour, existed in that liminal space between night and dawn. Too dark to see clearly, too close to sunrise to use full night vision without risking blindness when light broke. It was when the insurgents liked to position their traps. Willow's hand rested lightly on Ryder's harness as they walked. The dog pulled slightly left, and she noticed a metallic glint on the ground. Wire, thin as fishing line, stretched across the path. Her pulse quickened. "Sir, there's—" she started. Morrison waved her off without looking back. "Keep moving." Sergeant First Class Jasper Cole, the team's sniper, glanced back at Willow with a flicker of curiosity. Something about the way she'd spotted that wire, the speed of recognition, the tactical awareness, didn't match her supposed inexperience, but he said nothing. They continued forward, stepping carefully around the wire Willow had noticed. Morrison's radio crackled with routine check-ins. Everything seemed normal, routine, just another patrol in a war zone. Caleb Ford shifted his medical pack and shot a look at Willow. "You even know how to use that field kit?" he asked, nodding at the compact bag attached to her belt. Before Willow could answer, Hugo laughed. "She probably thinks it's for treating dogs." "That's what she's here for, isn't it?" Gaston added, not bothering to lower his voice. "Dog maintenance." Willow's jaw tightened, but she maintained her silence. Her hand unconsciously moved to her side, touching the edge of a scar through her uniform, a gesture so brief that only Jasper noticed. The sniper's eyes narrowed slightly. That unconscious movement, that touch to old wounds, it was familiar. He'd seen it before in operators who'd been through serious combat. The patrol reached a staging point where Morrison called a brief halt to review the route. The team gathered in a loose circle, checking weapons and gear. Willow automatically positioned herself with clear sight lines to all approaches, her back protected by a low wall. Tactical positioning, instinctive. Jasper watched her do it, his curiosity deepening. "All right, listen up," Morrison said, spreading a tactical map on the ground. We're moving through the urban section, then into the valley approach. Standard sweep pattern, stay alert for... The valley's a natural kill zone, Willow said quietly, almost to herself. But in the pre-dawn silence, everyone heard. Morrison's head snapped up. "Excuse me?" "Nothing, sir," Willow replied, dropping her gaze. "I apologize." "No, please, enlighten us," Morrison said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Share your vast tactical wisdom." The team turned to stare at Willow. Hugo's expression was openly mocking. Gaston crossed his arms, waiting for the entertainment. Caleb shook his head as if already embarrassed on her behalf. Willow felt Ryder press against her leg. Support, solidarity. "The valley has elevated positions on 3 sides," she said carefully. "Limited cover in the approach. If I were setting an ambush, that's where I'd..." She stopped herself. "But you're right, sir. I apologize for speaking out of turn." Morrison stared at her for a long moment, then turned back to his map. "As I was saying, before being interrupted by someone with precisely 0 combat experience," but Jasper was studying Willow now with full attention. That analysis had been perfect. Textbook anti-ambush recognition. And the way she'd described setting an ambush, not defending against one, but setting one, that language came from somewhere. Somewhere Morrison was too arrogant to notice. Before we continue with what happened next in the Kandahar darkness, I need to ask you something important. If you're feeling that same frustration watching Willow being dismissed and disrespected, that same anger seeing expertise ignored because of assumptions, then you need to hit that subscribe button right now. This channel tells the stories of warriors whose strength was underestimated, whose capabilities were dismissed until the moment truth exploded into view. Every week, we bring you these powerful narratives of redemption and revelation. Don't miss a single story. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let's continue. The patrol moved out again, entering the section where mud brick buildings lined narrow streets. A few early rising Afghan civilians watched from doorways, witnesses to whatever was about to unfold. Morrison maintained his confident pace, his team flowing around him like a well-oiled machine. They had worked together for 8 months, knew each other's movements, trusted each other's skills. They didn't trust Willow. Hugo deliberately shoulder-checked her as he passed, forcing her to stumble slightly. "Move aside. Support," he muttered. "Combat personnel coming through." Private First Class Aiden West, the youngest member of the team at 22, watched the interaction with discomfort. He'd joined the team only 6 weeks ago, and the casual cruelty toward Willow bothered him. But he was too junior to say anything, too new to challenge the team's established dynamics. Ryder's ears flattened, and he positioned himself between Willow and Hugo, protective, sensing threat. Hugo noticed and laughed. "Oh, the puppy's gonna protect you? That's adorable." "Ryder's not a puppy," Willow said quietly. "He's a combat veteran with 4 years of deployment experience. That's more than some humans I could mention." The words hung in the air for a moment, before Hugo's face reddened. "You got something to say to me?" "Stand down, both of you," Morrison ordered, though his eyes were on Willow. "Fletcher, one more outburst and you're walking back to base. Clear?" "Crystal, sir." They continued through the urban section. Willow checked her weapon, an M4 carbine standard issue, with fluid, efficient movements. The weapon check took her perhaps 15 seconds. Magazine out, chamber inspection, bolt check, magazine reseated, charging handle, safety verification. It was faster than most of the SEALs, executed with the kind of unconscious precision that came from thousands of repetitions. Jasper watched her do it and felt something click in his mind. That wasn't standard training, that was muscle memory at an elite level. "Where'd you learn to handle weapons like that?" he asked casually, falling back to walk beside her. Willow glanced at him, surprised to be addressed without hostility. "Training," she said simply. "What kind of training?" "The kind that teaches you to respect your weapon," she replied, which wasn't really an answer at all. Jasper smiled slightly, evasive without being defensive. "Interesting. How long you been doing K9 work? 3 years in this unit? And before that?" Willow's expression closed off. "Other assignments, sir." "You don't have to call me sir. I work for a living." It was the old enlisted joke, and he said it with a slight smile, testing her, seeing if she'd respond to the military humor. Willow's lips quirked almost imperceptibly. "Understood, Sergeant Cole." They walked in silence for a moment. Then Jasper said, "That valley analysis was spot on, by the way. You've got good tactical instincts." "Thank you. Where'd you develop them?" Observation, Willow said, and this time there was a finality to her tone that even Jasper recognized as a wall. He nodded and let it drop, but his curiosity was now fully engaged. The patrol reached a checkpoint where Morrison called for a radio status update. Willow stepped aside to give Ryder water from a collapsible bowl, and as she did, her sleeve rode up slightly, revealing the very edge of what looked like a tattoo on her shoulder. Jasper caught a glimpse, dark ink, what might have been a trident shape, but Willow noticed his gaze and quickly adjusted her sleeve. "Hot out here," she said neutrally, "even this early." "It is," Jasper agreed, but his mind was working, a trident tattoo. In the SEAL community, trident ink meant something specific, very specific, but that was impossible, wasn't it? Morrison finished his radio check and turned to address the team. "Command confirms clear route through the valley. Intelligence shows no activity in the past 72 hours. We proceed as planned." "Sir," Willow said, unable to help herself. "Intelligence reports can be outdated. Ryder is detecting—" "That dog is detecting its own shadow," Morrison cut her off. "I've read the intelligence reports. I've analyzed the tactical situation, and I've made the decision. We proceed. End of discussion." Caleb smirked at Willow. "Maybe stick to what you know, Fletcher. Let the professionals handle tactics." "Speaking of what you know," Gaston added, pulling out a handheld communications device, "we need to reset the frequency on these radios. They're drifting off channel." He fiddled with the device for a moment, then swore softly. "Can't get the bandwidth right. We're getting interference on the primary FREC." Willow watched him struggle for approximately 30 seconds before speaking. "You need to adjust to 420 megahertz and set the bandwidth to 0.5. The interference is from base communications bleeding over." Gaston stopped and stared at her. "What?" "420 megahertz," Willow repeated. "0.5 bandwidth. Should clear it up." "How would you possibly know that?" Willow hesitated, realizing she'd said too much. "I worked with comm systems before." Gaston made the adjustment, his expression skeptical. The radio immediately cleared, voices coming through crisp and clean. He stared at the device, then at Willow, confusion replacing his earlier mockery. That's operator-level knowledge. How did you—" "Lucky guess," Willow said, but her voice lacked conviction. Morrison grabbed the radio from Gaston and examined the settings. "You're telling me you know tactical communications frequency management?" "I picked up a few things, sir." "From where?" "Various assignments." Willow's answers were getting shorter, more guarded. She could feel the attention on her intensifying, and it made her deeply uncomfortable. This was exactly what she'd been trying to avoid. Speaking of advanced military technology, modern combat operations rely heavily on cutting-edge tactical communication systems. These encrypted radio networks allow teams to coordinate in real time across hostile environments, with secure satellite uplinks and jamming-resistant frequencies. Advanced keeps tracking devices with military-grade encryption ensure precise location data even in denied areas. Thermal imaging systems and night vision technology have revolutionized how operators navigate darkness. Body-worn medical monitors can track vital signs and alert medics to injuries before symptoms become critical. These technologies represent the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Morrison studied Willow with new suspicion. Not respect, but suspicion. In his worldview, support personnel who knew too much were either lying or dangerous. "We'll discuss your background later," he said coldly. "For now, stay quiet and stay back." The patrol resumed, but the dynamic had shifted slightly. Gaston kept glancing at Willow with confusion. Jasper watched her with active curiosity. Even Caleb seemed less certain of his earlier mockery. Only Hugo and Morrison remained fully dismissive, their egos too invested in their initial judgment to allow for reconsideration. They entered the approach to the valley as the sky began to lighten. Still dark, but no longer the absolute black of deepest night. The mountains rose on three sides, exactly as Willow had described. The path narrowed. Buildings gave way to rocky terrain with scattered cover. Ryder's body language changed completely. Every muscle tensed. His ears swiveled, tracking sounds the humans couldn't hear. A low whine escaped his throat, not a growl this time, but pure anxiety. Willow's hand tightened on his harness. "Sir," she said, and this time there was urgency in her voice. "We need to stop, right now." "Not this again," Morrison said without turning. "Sir, Ryder is never wrong. Something is—" One more word and you're walking back to base, Morrison snapped. That's a promise, Fletcher. In the command center back at base, Lieutenant Naomi Sterling sat at an intelligence terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard. She'd been monitoring the patrol's progress, and something was bothering her. She pulled up satellite imagery of the valley approach, then cross-referenced it with historical ambush patterns in the region. Her stomach dropped. She reached for her secure communications panel and opened a channel. Ghost 7, she transmitted on a frequency she knew only one person would be monitoring. This is oversight. Reading elevated threat markers in your sector. Pattern matches Kandahar ambush protocols from 2019. Authenticate. There was a long pause. Then, so quietly the other personnel in the command center couldn't hear. Authentication, Crimson Falcon 7-9er, threat acknowledged. Naomi's hands trembled slightly as she closed the channel. Captain Shaw noticed her reaction. Problem, Lieutenant? Just confirming intelligence, ma'am, Naomi replied, but her eyes stayed locked on the screen showing the patrol's location. She couldn't say more, couldn't reveal what she knew. The classification was too high, the stakes too severe. All she could do was watch and hope. Out in the valley approach, Willow felt her heart rate accelerate. Naomi's warning confirmed what Ryder had been trying to tell them. But she couldn't explain how she knew without revealing everything. And she wasn't ready for that, wasn't sure she'd ever be ready for that. Hugo moved up beside Morrison, and the two men conferred in low voices. Then Hugo turned and walked back to where Willow stood. The lieutenant wants me to make something clear to you, he said, his voice low and threatening. You don't question his decisions. You don't offer your opinions. You are here because regulations say K9 assets deploy with handlers, nothing more. You understand? I understand you're about to walk us all into a kill zone, Willow said quietly. Hugo's face went purple with rage. How dare you? Look at the sight lines, Willow said, her voice still quiet but no longer submissive. Something had shifted in her tone, a harder edge, a certainty that made even Hugo pause. Buildings at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock with clear firing positions. Natural choke point ahead at 90 meters. No cover for fallback. No lateral exit routes. We are walking into a textbook ambush setup, and if you had any real tactical training instead of just muscles and attitude, you'd see it too. The words hung between them like a physical challenge. Hugo's hand actually moved toward his sidearm, not to draw it, but in automatic aggressive response. Aiden took a half step forward, suddenly worried this was about to turn violent. Stand down, Bennett, Jasper called from his position. He'd been listening to the entire exchange, and something in Willow's tactical analysis had resonated with his own uneasy assessment of the terrain. She's not wrong about the sight lines. She's a K9 handler, Hugo spat. What would she know about... Sergeant Cole's right, Gaston said reluctantly. He'd been studying the buildings Willow mentioned. Those are good firing positions. I don't like it either. Morrison stopped walking and turned around, clearly annoyed at the disruption to his carefully planned patrol. What's the problem now? Fletcher's claiming we're walking into an ambush, Hugo said. Based on her extensive combat experience, he added with heavy sarcasm. Morrison looked at Willow, his expression a mixture of anger and exhaustion. You're questioning my tactical judgment? You? I'm trusting my K9's judgment, sir, Willow replied, but there was steel in her voice now. Ryder has a 97% accuracy rate on threat detection. He has never given a false positive on ambush warning. Not in 4 years, not in 43 combat deployments. And right now, he is telling us there is a threat ahead. Dogs make mistakes, Morrison said dismissively. Ryder doesn't. Then maybe he's finally broken that streak. Morrison turned away. We continue. Move out. But Willow didn't move. Ryder had broken free from heel position and physically blocked the path forward, standing rigid, every sense focused ahead. It was the most absolute refusal Willow had ever seen from him. Sir, we cannot... Do not tell me what we can and cannot do, Morrison exploded, wheeling on her. You are support personnel. You are barely qualified to be out here. You have 0 authority to question my orders. Then my authority doesn't matter, Willow said, her voice dropping to something cold and precise. Listen to the dog. Move that animal or I'll have it removed from service, Morrison threatened. Willow's expression went completely flat. Something flickered in her eyes. Something that made Jasper's trained instincts suddenly scream warning. He'd seen that look before, in the eyes of the most dangerous operators he'd ever worked with. The ones who could flip from calm to combat ready in a heartbeat. Quick question before we get to the chaos about to unfold. Are you still watching? Drop a comment right now telling me what you think Willow's real background is. Former Special Forces, intelligence operative, combat medic? Make your prediction, because in just a few minutes you're going to find out the truth, and I guarantee it's going to shock you. Willow pulled Ryder aside, off the path. The dog whined, anxious, but obeyed her command. Morrison nodded with satisfaction and resumed walking. The team followed, spreading into tactical formation as they entered the narrow section of the valley approach. Gaston stepped forward, and his boot touched something. He looked down. Time seemed to slow. Thin wire stretched across the path at ankle height. A tripwire. "Freeze!" Gaston shouted, his voice cracking with sudden terror. "Tripwire!" Everyone stopped moving. Absolute stillness. 7 seals frozen in mid-step, afraid to shift weight, afraid to breathe too hard. Gaston's boot rested against the wire with perhaps 2 pounds of pressure, enough to trigger if he moved. Willow's eyes swept the scene with professional speed. She saw what the others hadn't. Secondary pressure plates positioned on either side of the path. Backup triggers. The tripwire wasn't the only threat. It was a herding mechanism, designed to force targets onto the pressure plates when they tried to avoid the obvious wire. "Don't move laterally," she called out. "There are secondary." An explosion erupted from the building at 2 o'clock. Not an IED, a rocket-propelled grenade. It slammed into the rocky ground 15 meters from Morrison, showering the team with debris and concussive force. Morrison went down hard, blood already spreading from shrapnel wounds to his chest and leg. Then the world became chaos. Gunfire opened up from 3 positions, the buildings at 10 and 2 o'clock, and a compound window dead ahead. Crossfire, perfectly positioned, professionally executed. Exactly the ambush Willow and Ryder had been trying to warn them about. Hugo took a round to the leg and collapsed, screaming. Caleb dove for cover behind a low wall, his medical pack torn open by a near miss. Gaston was still frozen on the tripwire, unable to move, exposed, vulnerable. Jasper returned fire toward the rooftop position, his sniper training allowing him to identify the biggest threat. Aiden scrambled for Morrison, trying to drag the lieutenant to cover. The radio equipment on Morrison's back shattered under incoming fire, sparking and dying. No communications, no backup. No quick reaction force coming to save them. The SEAL team, elite and confident, was being torn apart, and then everything changed. Willow Fletcher stopped being a meek support handler and became something else entirely. She moved with a speed and precision that seemed impossible for someone who had been so passive moments before. In 3 seconds, she covered the distance to Gaston, assessed the tripwire setup, and identified the correct sequence to release the tension. "On 3, step straight back," she commanded, not suggested, commanded, in a voice that carried absolute authority. 1, 2, 3. Gaston stepped back. The wire released without triggering. No explosion. He stared at Willow with absolute shock. "Northeast rooftop," Willow snapped at Jasper, not even looking at him. "2 hostiles, suppressing fire, now!" Jasper obeyed without thinking, his body responding to the command before his brain caught up. He laid down covering fire on the rooftop position. 2 insurgents ducked behind cover. Willow dropped beside Morrison, her hands already moving with surgical efficiency through his wounds. The shrapnel had torn through his tactical vest, penetrating muscle and possibly nicking his femoral artery. She applied pressure with one hand while pulling a tourniquet from her belt with the other. "Caleb!" she called. "Medical pack! Move!" Caleb scrambled toward her, sliding the pack across the ground. Willow caught it one-handed, never releasing pressure on Morrison's chest wound. She opened the pack and began working with a speed and competence that made Caleb's jaw drop. Field surgery. Combat medicine. She was performing procedures he'd only read about in advanced trauma manuals. But it was the way she moved, the combat flow, the tactical awareness, the absolute calm under fire that truly shocked them. Willow returned fire one-handed with her M4 while maintaining pressure on Morrison's wound with the other. Her shots were precise, controlled, professional. She hit 2 targets in rapid succession, neutralizing the compound window position. Hugo, lying on the ground with his leg wound, stared at her in disbelief. What are you?" Willow didn't answer. She was too busy saving their lives. The torn fabric of her uniform sleeve had ripped further during her movement, and now part of her shoulder was clearly visible. On it, in black ink, was a tattoo that made Morrison's eyes go wide despite his pain and blood loss. A Navy SEAL trident, but not just any trident. Above it, DevGru, below it, Task Force Black, 20. And beneath that, a call sign, Ghost 7. Morrison tried to speak, blood bubbling at his lips. His hand reached toward the tattoo, trembling. You're... Willow met his eyes while wrapping the tourniquet around his leg. Yes, sir, she said quietly. I am. The gunfire continued, but something had shifted in the air. The remaining conscious SEALs, Jasper, Gaston, Caleb, Aiden, were staring at Willow with expressions of absolute shock. The meek handler was gone. In her place was an operator moving with the kind of fluid efficiency that only came from years of elite-level training. Jasper, Willow said, her voice carrying command authority that made the veteran sniper snap to attention instinctively. Northeast rooftop, 2 more targets behind the brick chimney. Engage. On it, Jasper replied automatically, then blinked, surprised at his own immediate compliance. Gaston, secure the 10 o'clock building entrance. Watch for secondary assault. Gaston moved to comply, still staring at her tattoo. Aiden, cover our 6. Nothing gets behind us. Yes, ma'am, Aiden responded, the formality unconscious. Caleb, I need you to take over on Morrison. Keep pressure on the chest wound. The tourniquet will hold for 45 minutes. Don't touch it. Caleb scrambled to position, his hands shaking as he took over from Willow. He'd thought he knew field medicine. What he'd just watched was something far beyond his training level. Willow stood, her M4 coming up in a smooth, practiced motion. She moved to check on Hugo, who was staring at her like she was a ghost. Your DevGru? He whispered. Your SEAL Team 6? Was, Willow corrected quietly, examining his leg wound. Past tense. But how? Women can't. We can now, Willow said, applying a pressure dressing to his leg. Been able to for 6 years. Some of us even do it well. There was no bitterness in her voice, just statement of fact. The firefight was beginning to wind down. Willow's tactical commands had organized the scattered team into an effective defensive position. The insurgents, realizing their ambush had failed to eliminate the targets, began withdrawing. Jasper picked off one more as he tried to flee across a rooftop. Then silence fell, broken only by Morrison's labored breathing and Hugo's occasional groans. Ryder trotted up to Willow, and she dropped one hand to his head briefly. Acknowledgement, connection. The dog had been covering their rear flank the entire time, neutralizing one insurgent who'd tried to circle around. Good dog. Always good dog. Gaston cleared the nearest building and returned, his face pale. 3 hostiles down. No others visible. We're clear for now. Good, Willow said. Aiden, I need you to climb to that elevation. She pointed to a small rise. And signal base with mirror flash. We're too far for hand signals, but close enough for mirror code. Tell them we need immediate medevac. 2 critical casualties. Coordinates follow. Aiden pulled out his signal mirror and scrambled up the rise without question. It was only later that he'd wonder how Willow had known he carried a signal mirror when most of the team didn't bother with that old-school equipment. Willow knelt beside Morrison again, checking his vitals. His eyes were open, focused on her with a mixture of pain and dawning understanding. Ghost 7, he whispered. I've heard stories. They said you died. Syria, 2019. 2021, Willow corrected gently. And almost, but not quite. Medical discharge, classified mission. She adjusted his bandage. You're going to be okay, sir. Help is coming. Why didn't you tell us? Morrison asked, his voice weak. Why didn't you say? Would you have believed me? Willow asked. Or would you have thought I was stolen valor, lying for attention? She met his eyes. Safer to stay quiet. Safer to let Ryder do the talking. Morrison's expression crumpled. We ignored him. We ignored you. We could have... You made a mistake, Willow said simply. Happens to everyone. You'll learn from it. That's what matters. Radio crackle suddenly burst from Jasper's backup unit. Team 1, this is base command. We have visual on your mirror signals. Medevac inbound. ETA 8 minutes. Authenticate your status. Willow reached for the radio, and as she did, Gaston saw the call sign registration on the team roster. His mouth fell open. The authentication code, it's registered to... Ghost 7 authenticate, the radio voice commanded. Willow pressed the transmit button. Authentication code, Crimson Falcon 79er. Ghost 7 confirms. 2 critical casualties requiring immediate evacuation. Hostile contact neutralized. Area secured. There was a long pause on the radio. Then a different voice, older, weighted with authority, and something that might have been emotion. Ghost 7, this is Command Actual. Colonel Cross on net. Is that really you? Willow closed her eyes briefly. Yes, sir. It's me. What's your current assignment, operator? K9 Special Operations Unit, sir. Handler designation. Another pause, longer this time, when Colonel Edwin Cross spoke again. His voice was tight. Copy that. Medevac inbound. You hold position. We'll debrief when you're back on base. Roger, sir. The radio fell silent. The team stared at Willow, really looked at her for the first time. Not support personnel, not a liability, one of the most elite operators in the entire United States military structure. A ghost story made flesh. Hugo spoke first, his voice rough with pain and shame. I'm sorry. Holy cow, I'm so sorry. Apology accepted, Willow said simply. Why K9? Caleb asked, and for once there was no mockery in his tone, only genuine confusion. Why step down from DevGru to, no offense, basically entry-level handler work? Willow looked at Ryder, who sat beside her with tongue lolling, looking ridiculously proud of himself. Because he needed me, she said, and because after Syria, I needed something that wasn't about ego or glory or proving anything. I needed a partner who would always tell the truth, who would never lie, who would trust me absolutely and deserve my trust absolutely in return. She scratched Ryder's ears. Dogs don't play politics. They just do the work. But you're wasted here, Gaston protested. Your skills, your experience. I'm not wasted, Willow interrupted quietly. I'm exactly where I choose to be. The fact that people like you didn't recognize that says more about your assumptions than my capabilities. The words landed like physical blows. Gaston flinched. Hugo looked away. Even Morrison, despite his pain, couldn't meet her eyes. The sound of helicopter rotors grew louder. The medevac was approaching fast. Willow stood and began organizing the casualty loading, directing the team with calm efficiency. They obeyed her commands without question now, the hierarchy completely inverted from 30 minutes ago. As the Black Hawk descended, kicking up dust and debris, Willow shielded Morrison from the worst of it. Captain Shaw emerged from the helicopter before it even fully landed, running across the clearing with 2 medics behind her. She stopped when she saw Willow, recognition flashing across her face. Fletcher, Shaw said carefully. Situation report. 2 critical, stable for transport, multiple minor injuries, hostile ambush neutralized with 6 confirmed enemy KIA. No friendly fatalities. Willow's report was crisp, professional. Recommend immediate departure and full debrief upon return to base. Shaw nodded slowly. Copy that. She paused, studying Willow's exposed tattoo. We'll talk later. Yes, ma'am. The medics loaded Morrison and Hugo onto the helicopter. The rest of the team boarded, battered, and shocked, but alive. Willow and Ryder climbed in last, as always bringing up the rear. But now, when the other SEALs looked at her, it wasn't with dismissal or mockery. It was with something closer to awe and fear, because they'd realized exactly how badly they'd misjudged her, and how close that misjudgment had come to killing them all. We're at the critical moment now, and if your heart is pounding, if you can't look away, then smash that like button. This is the kind of story that needs to be shared, the kind of truth about underestimation and revelation that more people need to hear. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to see this, and let's get to the moment everything changes. For military personnel and contractors operating in high-risk zones, specialized insurance coverage becomes absolutely critical. Combat zone life insurance policies designed specifically for special operations personnel provide comprehensive coverage that standard policies don't offer. Financial planning services tailored to military careers help operators manage hazard pay, deployment bonuses, and retirement accounts with tax advantages. Veterans' investment portfolios focused on long-term wealth building after service create financial security for families. Disability income protection ensures that if injuries end active duty careers, financial stability continues. These specialized financial services recognize the unique risks and needs of those who serve. The helicopter ride back to base was silent except for the thrum of the rotors. Morrison drifted in and out of consciousness, but every time his eyes opened, they found Willow, trying to understand, trying to reconcile the person he had dismissed with the operator who'd saved his life. Jasper sat across from Willow, openly studying her now. "How long were you with DevGru?" he finally asked. 3 years active operations, Willow replied. 2 years training and preparation before that. Syria, Jasper said. It wasn't a question. Classified. They said Ghost 7 died in Syria, that the whole team was lost. Most of them were, Willow said quietly, and something in her eyes went distant. I was lucky. Doesn't look like luck, Jasper observed, nodding toward her exposed scars, not just the one on her shoulder, but others now visible where her uniform had torn. Burns, shrapnel patterns. The signature wounds of an IED blast at close range. Lucky enough to survive, Willow clarified. Not lucky enough to stay in active DevGru rotation. Medical discharge. Psychological evaluation determined I was compromised. Too much risk for the unit. But not too much risk to be a K9 handler in an active combat zone? Caleb asked incredulously. Willow shrugged. Different evaluation standards, different mission parameters. K9 unit was willing to take me. I was willing to serve in whatever capacity allowed me to stay in the fight. She looked down at Ryder, who had fallen asleep with his head on her lap. Found out I prefer it this way. Simpler, clearer, no politics. Just people who treat you like nonsense, Aiden said bitterly. The young private had been silent until now, but his expression was twisted with guilt and shame. We were so terrible to you. Yes, Willow agreed simply. You were. The blunt honesty made them all flinch. Why didn't you correct us? Gaston asked. Why didn't you just show us your credentials from the start? Because credentials shouldn't matter, Willow said. Ryder's warning should have been enough. My tactical analysis should have been enough. The fact that I was telling you the truth should have been enough. She met each of their eyes in turn. You didn't listen because you'd already decided I wasn't worth listening to. No credential would have changed that until you wanted to see differently. Morrison stirred, his voice weak but clear. She's right, he rasped. We made assumptions. Lazy, arrogant assumptions. Could have gotten us all killed. He coughed, pain crossing his face. Died get us hurt. Ghost 7 saved our lives, and we spent days treating her like she was worthless. Not worthless, Hugo said from his stretcher. His voice was thick with medication and shame. Worse, we treated her like she was dangerous to us by existing, like she was a liability. He looked at Willow directly. You weren't the liability. We were. Willow acknowledged the comment with a slight nod but didn't respond. There was nothing to say. They knew what they'd done. Now they had to live with it. The helicopter touched down at base, and the organized chaos of medical response took over. Morrison and Hugo were rushed to the field hospital. The rest of the team was directed to debriefing, but Captain Shaw intercepted Willow before she could follow. Fletcher, Shaw said quietly. Colonel Cross wants to see you immediately. Willow's jaw tightened, but she nodded. Yes, ma'am. I'll take Ryder to the kennel, Shaw offered. Get him fed and watered. He deserves it. Thank you, ma'am. Willow handed over the leash, and Ryder whined softly, reluctant to leave her side. It's okay, boy. Stand down. Rest. The dog obeyed, but kept looking back as Shaw led him away. Willow walked across the base toward the command building, aware of eyes following her. Word had already spread. It always spread fast on military bases. The quiet K9 handler was actually Ghost 7, one of the legends, one of the ghosts. She hated it. This attention, this revelation, this exactly what she'd been trying to avoid by choosing the K9 unit. She had wanted to serve without the weight of her past, without the expectations and the questions and the looks that mixed awe with fear. Now it was all back. Colonel Edwin Cross's office was at the end of a long corridor, door guarded by an attentive staff sergeant who snapped to attention when Willow approached. The colonel is expecting you, ma'am, the sergeant said, and the ma'am wasn't standard handler courtesy. It was the respect given to proven combat operators. Word had definitely spread. Willow entered the office and stood at attention. Handler Fletcher reporting as ordered, sir. Cross looked up from his desk, and for a long moment he just stared at her. He was in his 50s, gray-haired and weathered, with the bearing of someone who'd spent 30 years in the most dangerous places on Earth. He'd been Willow's commanding officer during her DevGru years. He'd been the one to visit her in the hospital after Syria. He'd been the one to sign off on her medical discharge. "At ease, Fletcher," he said finally. "Or should I say Ghost 7? Fletcher is fine, sir. That's who I am now." Cross stood and walked around his desk, studying her with an intensity that made most people uncomfortable. Willow held his gaze steadily. They'd been through too much together for games. "Morrison's team almost died out there," Cross said. "Would have died if not for you. If they'd listened to Ryder, it wouldn't have gotten that far, sir. They didn't listen because they didn't respect you." "Yes, sir. And they didn't respect you because you didn't tell them who you were." Willow's expression tightened. "With respect, sir, I shouldn't have needed to. My analysis was correct. My warnings were valid. The fact that I have a particular background shouldn't be a prerequisite for being believed." Cross smiled slightly. "Still as stubborn as ever, I see." "It's not stubbornness, sir. It's principle. Sometimes principle gets people killed, Fletcher. And sometimes arrogance gets people killed, see? Which was the bigger factor today?" Cross studied her for another long moment, then laughed, a short, sharp bark of sound. "You always were direct. I'll give you that." He returned to his desk. "Lieutenant Sterling informs me you received coded warning about the ambush threat." "Yes, sir." "She shouldn't have that information. K9 handler assignments don't rate that level of intelligence access." "Lieutenant Sterling was part of my operation team in Syria, sir. She still has connections to certain information streams." "Connections she uses to watch your back." "Apparently, sir." Cross leaned back in his chair. "Morrison will live, so will Bennett, assuming there's no infection or complications. They'll both be sidelined for weeks, minimum. The rest of that team is going to need serious psychological debriefing after realizing how badly they screwed up." "They made an honest mistake, sir." "Did they?" Cross asked sharply. "Was it honest? Or was it bias and arrogance dressed up as professional judgment?" Willow didn't answer immediately. Finally, "Both, sir. It can be both." "And you're willing to forgive that?" "I'm willing to let them learn from it, sir." "That's not quite the same thing." Cross nodded slowly. "You could come back, you know. DevGrew, full active status. I've watched your performance today. Your clearances are still valid. Your skills haven't diminished. If anything, you're sharper than before. Syria took a lot from you, but it didn't break you. You could return." Willow had known this was coming. She'd known it from the moment her tattoo was exposed, from the moment her identity was revealed, the offer to return, the chance to reclaim Ghost 7. "No, sir," she said quietly. Cross raised an eyebrow. "No?" "No, sir. With respect, I'm where I belong. You belong in a K9 unit, handler grade, after everything you've accomplished?" "Yes, sir." Willow's voice was firm. "Ryder needs me, and I need him. What happened today proves that K9 teams are undervalued and underutilized. If I can change that, if I can show people that these partnerships save lives, that's more valuable than adding one more operator to DevGrew's roster." "You really believe that?" "I really do, sir." Cross studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, you stay with the K9 unit. But," he held up a hand before she could express relief, "you're getting a rank adjustment. Staff Sergeant, minimum. Your current handler grade doesn't match your capabilities or your value to this unit. And," he continued, overriding her automatic protest, "you're going to be training new K9 teams, teaching them what you know, including teaching operators like Morrison to respect these partnerships. Understood?" Willow considered this. Training, teaching, passing on knowledge. It wasn't what she'd expected, but it made sense. "Understood, sir. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You're also going to be Morrison's instructor when he returns to duty. You're going to teach him, and his entire team, a course on tactical integration of K9 assets. They're going to learn from their mistake by learning from you." Willow's lips quirked in a slight smile. "That's going to be uncomfortable for everyone involved, sir." "Good," Cross said bluntly. "Comfortable people don't learn. Uncomfortable people figure themselves out real fast." He stood. "Dismissed, Fletcher. Get some rest. And for the record, I'm proud of you. Not for the heroics today, but for the choice you made to serve quietly instead of chasing glory. That's real strength." "Thank you, sir." Willow saluted, sharp, precise, and Cross returned it with equal formality. She left the office and walked back across the base, processing everything. New rank, training duties, Morrison as a student. It was going to change everything about her quiet existence in the K9 unit. But maybe that was okay. Maybe it was time for things to change. She found Ryder in the kennel, and the dog launched himself at her with pure joy, tail wagging so hard his entire back end waggled. She knelt and let him lick her face, laughing despite herself. "Good boy," she whispered. "Such a good boy. You tried to tell them. You tried so hard." Ryder yipped, agreement, vindication. "Come on," Willow said. "Let's go get you the biggest steak the mess hall will give us. You earned it." They walked together through the base, and Willow felt the eyes on them, but this time it was different. Not dismissal or mockery, respect, recognition, the way people looked at proven warriors and their partners. It was going to take getting used to. But with Ryder by her side, she figured she'd manage. 3 days later, Morrison woke in the field hospital with tubes running from his arms and a chest that felt like it had been hit by a truck, which, medically speaking, wasn't far from the truth. Shrapnel trauma created similar internal damage patterns. He blinked at the sterile ceiling, trying to remember how he'd gotten here. Then, memory flooded back. The ambush, the explosion, the pain, and Willow Fletcher's hands on his chest, keeping him alive while bullets cracked overhead. Willow Fletcher. Ghost 7. He turned his head, wincing at the movement, and found Captain Shaw sitting beside his bed. She'd been reading a report, but now set it aside and met his gaze steadily. "Welcome back, Lieutenant," she said. "You've been out for 60 hours. Doctors say you'll make a full recovery, assuming you follow orders for once in your life." Morrison's throat was dry. "The team? All alive? Bennett's in surgery right now. Second procedure to clean the wound track. He'll walk again, but it's going to be months. The others have minor injuries, mostly treated and released." Shaw leaned forward. "You're lucky Fletcher was there. The medic said her field treatment was textbook perfect. Another 5 minutes without that tourniquet and you'd have bled out." "Fletcher," Morrison whispered. "Is she—" "She's fine, physically unharmed, currently back on duty with her K9 unit." Shaw's expression hardened. "We need to talk about what happened out there, Lieutenant. Your decisions, your treatment of Handler Fletcher, the systematic dismissal of valid tactical intelligence." Morrison closed his eyes. "I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you nearly got your entire team killed through arrogance and bias. That's not a small thing, Morrison. That's career-ending material." "Now, I understand, ma'am." "Colonel Cross has ordered a full investigation and after-action review. You'll be required to provide detailed testimony about every decision made during that patrol." Shaw's voice softened slightly. "But he's also given you an opportunity, a chance to learn from this instead of just being punished for it." Morrison opened his eyes. "What kind of opportunity?" "When you're cleared for duty, you'll be attending a training course. K9 Tactical Integration. Instructor, Staff Sergeant Willow Fletcher." Morrison's mouth fell open. "Staff Sergeant?" "She's been promoted, also assigned to training duties, teaching operators like you how to properly utilize K9 assets in combat operations." Shaw smiled grimly. "You're going to learn from the person you dismissed, and you're going to learn well, or you're going to be reassigned to a desk for the rest of your career. Colonel's orders." "I deserve worse than that," Morrison said quietly. "Yes," Shaw agreed. "You do. But Fletcher requested leniency. She said you made an honest mistake and deserved the chance to correct it." Shaw stood. "Don't waste that chance, Lieutenant. A lot of people are watching to see if you're capable of actual growth, or if you're just another arrogant operator who got lucky." She left him alone with his thoughts and his shame. Across the base, in a conference room that had been converted to a temporary classroom, Willow stood before a group of 12 K9 handlers, some new, some experienced, all staring at her with a mixture of awe and curiosity. Word had spread. Everyone knew who Ghost 7 was now. Everyone knew what she'd done. "Tactical K9 deployment isn't about having a pet on the battlefield," Willow said, her voice calm and professional. "It's about integrating a highly trained specialist into your operational framework. The dog isn't there to make you feel better. The dog is there to do a job you cannot do." She clicked to the next slide, showing Ryder in various working positions. Belgian Malinois, like Ryder, have olfactory capabilities approximately 40 times more sensitive than human norms. They can detect explosives, drugs, and human scent at distances and in conditions where electronic equipment fails. They can identify threats before your eyes or your instruments register danger. One of the handlers raised a hand. "But how do we convince combat teams to trust that?" Most operators think K9 units are just for show. You don't convince them, Willow said bluntly. You demonstrate value through consistent professional performance. You prove your worth every single day. And when they still don't listen, she paused, meeting each handler's eyes in turn, you document everything. You make sure the record shows you provided accurate intelligence. Because when something goes wrong, and eventually something will go wrong, the truth needs to be clear. Another handler spoke up. We heard what happened with Morrison's team, that you warned them and they ignored you. Multiple times, Willow confirmed. Ryder detected the ambush threat from over 200 meters out. We provided tactical analysis of the kill zone. We identified the tripwire before anyone stepped on it. All of that was documented and ignored. Because they didn't respect you. Because they didn't respect the capability, Willow corrected. They saw K9 handler and assumed incompetence. They made judgments based on their biases rather than on the evidence in front of them. She clicked to another slide showing threat detection statistics. Here's the truth. K9 units have a 94% accuracy rate on explosive detection in combat environments. Human operators have a 67% rate. Electronic equipment has a 72% rate. The dog is literally the best tool you have, but only if people actually use the tool. The class was silent, absorbing this. Your job, Willow continued, is to make sure your K9 partner gets heard, document everything, maintain professional standards, demand respect through competence, and never, ever compromise on your dog's welfare or your tactical judgment just because someone outranks you and wants you to be quiet. Even if it means getting in trouble, a young handler asked nervously. Especially if it means getting in trouble, Willow said firmly, because your partner's intelligence might be the only thing standing between your team and catastrophe. Morrison's team learned that the hard way. Make sure your teams don't have to. After high-intensity military service, many veterans pursue advanced education and specialized legal guidance. Post-military certification programs in tactical training, security consulting, and crisis management allow operators to transition their skills into civilian careers. Online degree programs with military-friendly scheduling recognize the unique challenges of active duty education. Veterans legal services specializing in medical discharge appeals, benefits claims, and security clearance issues provide critical support. Career transition coaching helps former operators navigate corporate environments while maintaining their warrior identity. These educational and legal resources ensure that service members continue to thrive after their military careers. The class ended, and the handlers filed out, most of them stopping to thank Willow or ask follow-up questions. She answered each one patiently, drawing on her years of experience. This was different from DevGru operations, quieter, less dramatic, but it felt important in a way that pure combat never had. She was building something, creating change at a systemic level. Ryder waited outside the classroom, and several handlers stopped to admire him. He tolerated the attention with professional dignity, but his eyes tracked Willow constantly. When she emerged, his tail began wagging, and she smiled. "Ready for rounds?" she asked him. He barked once. Affirmative. They walked through the base together, checking on the other K9 units, ensuring proper care and training standards. It was routine work, the kind of thing Willow had been doing for 3 years. But now, when she walked, people saluted. Officers nodded respectfully. Enlisted personnel stepped aside to let her pass. The Ghost 7 legend followed her everywhere. Lieutenant Naomi Sterling caught up with her near the K9 kennels. "Fletcher, got a minute?" "Of course, ma'am." Willow gestured to a bench, and they sat. Ryder positioned himself between them, protective as always. "I wanted to apologize," Naomi said without preamble, "for not being able to give you better warning. I saw the threat pattern developing, but the intelligence classification protocols meant I couldn't just broadcast it openly. I had to use the coded channel, and by then—" "You did exactly right," Willow interrupted. "You gave me what I needed within the constraints you had. The fact that Morrison refused to listen isn't your responsibility." "Still feels like I failed you." "You didn't," Willow said firmly. "You kept my cover as long as possible. You gave me tactical intelligence through proper channels. You did your job perfectly, Naomi. What happened after that was on Morrison and his team." Naomi relaxed slightly. "Colonel Cross is talking about bringing you back into intelligence liaison work. keeping the K9 assignment but adding high-level briefing access. He thinks your unique perspective, operator experience combined with support role insight, could be valuable for threat assessment. Willow considered this. Would it compromise my training duties? No. If anything, it would enhance them. You would have access to broader threat data, could teach from a more informed position. Then I'm open to it, Willow said, as long as it doesn't take me away from Ryder or the other K9 teams. It won't, Naomi stood. There's a briefing tomorrow at 0800, classified level. You're invited if you want to attend. I'll be there. After Naomi left, Willow sat alone with Ryder, watching the sun begin to set over the Afghan mountains. 3 years she'd been here, working quietly in the shadows. 3 years of being dismissed and underestimated. And now, in just 3 days, everything had changed. She wasn't sure if it was better or worse. What do you think, boy? She asked Ryder. Did we do the right thing? Ryder leaned against her leg, solid and warm and certain. For him, it was simple. They'd saved lives. They'd done their job. That was enough. Maybe it should be enough for her, too. The next morning, Morrison discharged himself from the field hospital against medical advice. His chest was still bandaged, his legs still stiff, but he refused to stay in bed while his team faced consequences for his decisions. Captain Shaw tried to stop him, but one look at his expression told her it was pointless. Some things had to be done, regardless of pain. He found his team in the barracks: Jasper, Gaston, Caleb, and Aiden. Hugo was still in surgery. They looked up when Morrison entered, and their faces showed the same guilt and shame he felt. "We need to talk," Morrison said, easing himself into a chair with visible effort. "About what we did. What I did." "Sir, you should be resting," Caleb started. "No, this can't wait." And Morrison looked at each of them. "I failed you, as a leader, as a tactician, as a human being. I let my ego and my biases blind me to valid intelligence. I dismissed someone who was trying to help us because I'd already decided she wasn't worth listening to, and I nearly got us all killed." "We all did it," Jasper said quietly. "It wasn't just you, sir. We all bought into the disrespect. We all participated in treating Fletcher like she was worthless." "Which makes it worse, not better," Morrison said. "We created a culture where someone with her capabilities and experience felt she had to hide who she was just to avoid our mockery. Think about that. Ghost 7, one of the most decorated DevGru operators in recent history, felt safer pretending to be incompetent than revealing her true credentials. What does that say about us?" The silence was heavy and uncomfortable. "It says we're not as professional as we thought," Gaston said finally. "It says we judge based on appearances and assumptions, instead of evidence and performance. It says we're exactly the kind of operators who shouldn't be trusted with high-stakes missions," Caleb added bitterly, "because we can't recognize value when it's standing right in front of us." Aiden, the youngest, spoke up hesitantly. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" "Granted. I knew it was wrong, the way we treated her. I knew it, but I didn't say anything because I was new and didn't want to go against the team culture." His voice cracked slightly. "I was a coward, and I'm sorry." "You weren't a coward," Morrison said. "You were junior in a toxic environment. That's on me, not you. I set the tone. I created the culture where speaking up felt impossible." He took a deep breath, pain crossing his face. "We're going to fix this, all of us, together." "How?" Jasper asked. "First, we're going to apologize, formally, in front of witnesses. Fletcher deserves that, and the entire base needs to see that we acknowledge what we did." Morrison paused. "Second, we're going to attend her training course, learn from her, not just about K9 integration, but about respect and professionalism, and recognizing expertise regardless of rank or role. Colonel Cross already mandated that," Gaston pointed out. "I know, but we're not doing it because we're ordered to. We're doing it because it's right, because we need to learn. Because we owe it to Fletcher and to every support specialist who's ever been dismissed by arrogant operators who think they know everything." Morrison's voice hardened. "And third, we're going to be better. We're going to change how we interact with support personnel. We're going to listen. We're going to respect. We're going to remember that everyone on this base has value, regardless of their job title or appearance." The aftermath of this mission is something you won't believe. But before we finish, I want you to know there's another story waiting for you. Click the video appearing on your screen right now, about another warrior who was dismissed until one critical moment proved everyone wrong. Trust me, you need to see what happens next. The team spent the morning preparing, and by 1300 hours, they had assembled in front of the K9 training facility. Word had spread, it always did on military bases, and a crowd had gathered. Enlisted personnel, officers, support staff, all curious to see what would happen. Willow emerged from the building with Ryder at her side, clearly not expecting the gathering. She stopped when she saw Morrison's team standing in formation, saw the crowd of witnesses, saw Captain Shaw and Colonel Cross standing to the side as official observers. Morrison stepped forward despite his injuries, moving with careful precision. When he reached Willow, he came to attention and saluted. Full military formality, respect given to a superior operator. Willow returned the salute automatically, confusion evident on her face. "Staff Sergeant Fletcher," Morrison said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "On behalf of myself and my team, I formally apologize for our conduct during recent operations. We dismissed your tactical expertise, ignored your intelligence assessments, and treated you with disrespect that was both unprofessional and dangerous. Our actions nearly resulted in catastrophic casualties. Your actions saved our lives." He paused, making sure every word was heard clearly. "You warned us repeatedly about the ambush threat. You provided accurate tactical analysis of the kill zone. You identified explosive devices before they could harm us. And when we failed to listen, when our arrogance and bias put us in mortal danger, you set aside your justified anger and saved us anyway." Morrison's voice grew rougher. "That's the mark of true professionalism, true warrior spirit. You are everything we should aspire to be, and we failed to recognize it because we were too busy judging you based on superficial criteria that had nothing to do with your actual capabilities." Behind him, the rest of the team stepped forward in unison. Jasper spoke next. "Staff Sergeant, I apologize for my initial skepticism and my failure to support you when others were being disrespectful. I recognized your skills but didn't defend you. That was cowardice on my part." Gaston followed. "Staff Sergeant, I apologize for dismissing your technical knowledge and tactical input. I let my assumptions about K9 handlers blind me to the expertise right in front of me. I was wrong and I'm sorry." Caleb's voice shook slightly. "Staff Sergeant, I apologize for mocking your medical capabilities and questioning your training. You performed field surgery at an elite level while under fire, and I have nothing but respect and admiration for your skills. I was arrogant and foolish, and I deeply regret my behavior." Aiden stepped forward last, the youngest and most visibly emotional. "Staff Sergeant, I apologize for not speaking up when I knew the treatment you were receiving was wrong. I was intimidated by the team culture, but that's no excuse. I should have stood up for you. I should have been better. I'm sorry." The crowd was completely silent. Every eye was on Willow, waiting to see how she would respond. She looked at each of them in turn, her expression unreadable. Ryder sat beside her, watching the SEALs with calm assessment. Finally, Willow spoke. "Apologies accepted," she said simply. Then, after a pause, "What matters now isn't what happened then. What matters is what happens next. Whether you learn, whether you grow, whether you take this experience and use it to become better operators and better human beings." She looked past them to the assembled crowd. "This isn't just about these 5 men. It's about a culture that values certain types of service over others. That assumes competence based on job titles and dismisses expertise that doesn't fit preconceived notions. Every person on this base has skills and knowledge that could save lives, but only if people are willing to listen, only if respect is given based on evidence rather than assumptions." Willow's gaze returned to Morrison. "You made a mistake, Lieutenant, a serious one, but mistakes are only truly failures if we refuse to learn from them. So, learn, change, become the leader your team needs, one who recognizes value in all its forms." Morrison nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what I intend to do." Colonel Cross stepped forward, and the crowd immediately came to attention. "As you were," he said, his voice carrying authority that demanded attention. "What we've witnessed here today is important. Not comfortable, but important. Lieutenant Morrison and his team have acknowledged their failures publicly. That takes courage." He turned to address the entire assembly. "But let's be clear, this wasn't just their failure. This was a systemic issue. How many of you have dismissed K9 handlers? How many have treated support personnel as lesser? How many have made assumptions about someone's capabilities based on their appearance or job title? The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. Effective immediately, Cross continued. There will be mandatory training for all combat units on proper integration and utilization of K9 assets. Staff Sergeant Fletcher will be leading these courses. Attendance is not optional. Respect is not negotiable. Am I clear? Yes, sir, the response echoed from multiple voices. Furthermore, Cross said, I'm implementing a new protocol. When K9 units provide threat warnings, those warnings will be treated as priority intelligence requiring mandatory assessment. No more dismissals, no more assumptions. The dog is a tactical asset and will be treated as such. He paused, letting that sink in. Staff Sergeant Fletcher could have let Morrison's team die. She could have stayed back, protected herself and her king, and let them face the consequences of their arrogance. Instead, she chose to save them. She chose service over revenge. That's the kind of warrior we need more of in this military. That's the standard we should all aspire to meet. Cross turned to Willow and rendered a formal salute, colonel to staff sergeant, a gesture that shocked many in the crowd. Willow returned it with crisp precision. Carry on, staff sergeant, Cross said, and know that you have my full support and respect. Thank you, sir, Willow replied. The crowd began to disperse, people talking in low, intense voices. The story would spread beyond this base, Willow knew. It always did. Ghost 7's revelation would become legend, passed through military channels, probably exaggerated with each retelling. She'd wanted to avoid exactly this kind of attention, but perhaps some good could come from it. Perhaps other support specialists would feel more confident speaking up. Perhaps more operators would think twice before dismissing someone based on superficial judgments. Perhaps some lives would be saved because people learned to listen. Morrison and his team remained, clearly wanting to say more, but uncertain how to proceed. Finally, Morrison spoke quietly. The colonel mentioned we're assigned to your next training course. When does it start? Next Monday, Willow replied. 0600 hours. Bring your gear and an open mind. We'll be doing practical exercises with actual K9 teams in simulated combat scenarios. We'll be there, Morrison promised. And sir, I mean Staff Sergeant, thank you for saving our lives, for giving us this chance, for being better than we deserved. Just be better going forward, Willow said. That's all the thanks I need. She turned and walked away with Ryder, leaving the SEALs to process everything. As she walked, other K9 handlers approached her, quietly, hesitantly, with expressions of gratitude and new confidence. She'd done something they had all wanted to do, but never could. She'd forced respect where there had been only dismissal. One handler, a young woman named Kelly, approached with her German Shepherd. Staff Sergeant, I just wanted to say, thank you. I've been dealing with similar treatment from my assigned unit. Constant mockery, dismissal of threat warnings, the whole thing. I was starting to think maybe I wasn't cut out for this work. You are, Willow said firmly. If your K9 is alerting and they're not listening, document everything. Follow protocols. Stand your ground. You're not the problem. They are. But what if something goes wrong? What if I get blamed? Then you have documentation showing you did your job correctly. You provided accurate intelligence. If they chose to ignore it, that's on them, not you. Willow put a hand on Kelly's shoulder. Never compromise your professional judgment to make someone else comfortable. Your job is to keep people alive, not to be liked. Kelly nodded, her expression firming with new resolve. Yes, ma'am, I won't. Similar conversations happened throughout the day. K9 handlers who'd been struggling with disrespect and dismissal suddenly had hope, had an example, had proof that standing firm on professional standards was possible and right. By evening, Willow was exhausted, not physically, but emotionally. She'd never wanted to be a figurehead or inspiration. She just wanted to do her job quietly and competently, but the revelation of Ghost 7 had made that impossible. She found herself back at Ryder's kennel, sitting on the floor with him, drawing comfort from his uncomplicated presence. He didn't care about call signs or legends or political implications. He just cared that she was there, that they were together, that they were safe. Think we can go back to normal? She asked him. Ryder tilted his head, ears perked. His expression seemed to say, this is normal now. Adapt. Smart dog. The door to the kennel opened, and Master Chief Samuel Porter entered, the SEAL instructor whose voice had come over the radio during the ambush, validating Willow's credentials. He was a legend in his own right, 45 years old, with more combat experience than most people could imagine. "Staff Sergeant," he said respectfully, "mind if I join you?" "Of course not, Master Chief." Willow stood, but Porter waved her back down and sat on the floor beside her. Ryder sniffed him cautiously, then accepted his presence. "I trained Morrison," Porter said without preamble, 8 years ago. He was one of my best students, smart, dedicated, tactically brilliant. I thought I taught him better than what I saw out there. "He made a mistake," Willow said. "He's learning from it." "That's generous of you," Porter scratched Ryder's ears absently. "I heard about your DevGru record, heard about Syria, heard about what you did before the medical discharge." He paused. "I also heard you could have come back to active operations multiple times, but you keep choosing to stay with K9 units." "That's correct." "Why?" Willow considered the question carefully. "Because in DevGru, everything was about ego and competition and proving you belonged. Every mission was a test. Every operation was a chance to fail and be cut. Even with the best teammates, there was always this underlying pressure to be the best, to never show weakness, to never admit doubt." She looked at Ryder, who gazed back with absolute trust. "With K9 work, it's different. Ryder doesn't care about my ego. He doesn't judge my performance against some arbitrary standard. He just needs me to be present, attentive, and trustworthy. And I need the same from him. It's pure partnership without politics. After Syria, after losing most of my team to an ambush we should have seen coming, after being evaluated and re-evaluated and told I was psychologically compromised, I needed something simple and true. I found it here." Porter nodded slowly. "That makes sense. More sense than I expected, actually." He stood, joints creaking. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing more good here than you ever could have done back in DevGru. Those kids you're training, handlers like Kelly, they needed someone to show them it's possible to be both strong and dismissed, competent and underestimated, and still succeed. You're that example now." "I didn't want to be." "Nobody who's actually worth looking up to ever wants the job," Porter said with a slight smile. "That's how you know they're genuine. The ones who seek attention are usually full of nonsense." He headed for the door, then paused. "Morrison and his team will be at your training session Monday. I'll be there too, observing. Want to see how you handle teaching operators who've seen exactly what happens when they ignore good intelligence." "Should be interesting," Willow said dryly. "Interesting is one word for it." Porter left, and Willow was alone with Ryder again. The weekend passed quietly. Willow prepared training materials, reviewed K9 integration protocols, and spent time with the other handlers. Hugo was released from surgery with a positive prognosis. He'd walk again, though he'd carry a limp for the rest of his life. Morrison continued recovering, pushing through physical therapy with determined focus. Monday morning arrived with the kind of desert heat that made breathing feel like work. Willow stood in the training area at 0545, watching Morrison's team arrive. They looked nervous, unusual for SEALs, and painfully respectful. Hugo was on crutches but had insisted on attending. Master Chief Porter stood to the side with Captain Shaw and Colonel Cross. Apparently, this training session was going to have very senior oversight. "Morning, Staff Sergeant," Morrison said, saluting formally. "Morning, Lieutenant. Good to see you mobile." Willow returned the salute, then addressed the group. "Today we're going to run through basic K9 integration protocols. You'll each be paired with a handler and dog team. You'll run a standard patrol scenario with threat assessment. The difference is, this time you're going to actually listen when the K9 alerts." She gestured to 6 handler teams lined up behind her, Kelly and her German Shepherd among them. These handlers will be providing real-time threat intelligence during the exercise. Your job is to integrate that intelligence into your tactical decision-making. Failure to properly respond to K9 alerts will result in simulated casualties. Questions? Jasper raised his hand. "What if we disagree with the K9 assessment?" "Then you document your reasoning and proceed with caution, but you don't dismiss it, you don't ignore it. You treat it as valid intelligence requiring assessment." Willow's voice was firm. "The K9 might be wrong, it happens, but you evaluate the possibility seriously, rather than automatically assuming the dog is mistaken." "How do we know the difference between a real alert and the dog just being excited?" Caleb asked. "That's what your handler is for," Willow replied. "They know their K9's signals and behaviors. They can tell you if it's a genuine alert or environmental reaction. But that requires you to actually communicate with the handler, ask questions, build working relationships. Treat them as tactical partners rather than support assets you can ignore. She paired each SEAL with a handler team, deliberately putting Morrison with Kelly, the handler who'd expressed doubt about her capabilities. "You two will run point," Willow said. "Kelly, show the lieutenant how it's done properly." Kelly straightened, clearly both nervous and determined. "Yes, ma'am." The exercise began. The teams moved through a mock patrol route with hidden threats, training explosives, concealed personnel, ambush positions. The K9 teams identified each threat well in advance. The difference was dramatic. Instead of ignoring warnings, the SEALs now stopped, assessed, and adjusted their approach based on K9 intelligence. Morrison worked well with Kelly, asking questions, watching her dog's body language, learning to read the signals. At one point, Kelly's German Shepherd alerted to what appeared to be empty ground. Morrison's instinct was clearly to keep moving, but he stopped himself. "What's your dog detecting?" he asked Kelly. "Explosive residue, sir. Recent placement, probably within the last few hours." Morrison called halt and ordered the area checked. They found a training IED that had been placed just 30 minutes before the exercise started. If they'd walked past it, they'd have been killed in the simulation. Morrison looked at Kelly with genuine respect. "Good catch. Your dog just saved our lives." Kelly beamed. "He's very good at his job, sir. I can see that now." The exercise ran for 4 hours, with each team rotating through different scenarios. By the end, every SEAL had experienced multiple instances of K9 teams providing critical intelligence that prevented simulated casualties. The lessons were impossible to ignore. During the debrief, Colonel Cross addressed the teams. "What you experience today is standard K9 capability when properly utilized. Every threat you encountered, every hazard you avoided, that's available on every patrol if you're willing to listen to your K9 assets. The question is, will you?" Morrison spoke up. "We will, sir. Speaking for my team, we understand now what we were missing, what we were dismissing. We won't make that mistake again." "See that you don't," Cross said, "because the next time, Staff Sergeant Fletcher might not be there to save you." The training continued daily for 2 weeks. Morrison's team attended every session, absorbing everything Willow taught. They learned K9 body language, handler communication protocols, threat assessment integration, and tactical planning with K9 assets. More importantly, they learned humility and respect. On the final day of training, Morrison approached Willow privately. "I wanted you to know, I've put in a formal recommendation that every SEAL team deploy with integrated K9 assets as standard protocol, not as support, but as core team members. I've also recommended mandatory K9 integration training for all operator candidates." Willow nodded slowly. "That's a significant change. It's a necessary change, one I should have advocated for years ago." Morrison paused. "I also wanted to tell you, and I don't know if this matters, but working with Kelly and her dog over these past 2 weeks has been humbling. She's incredible at what she does. The precision, the communication, the partnership, it's operating at the same elite level I saw in DevGru, just in a different form. I was completely blind to it before. You see it now," Willow said. "That's what matters. Because you forced me to see it." Morrison met her eyes directly. "You could have let me die out there. Part of me thinks maybe I deserve to. But you saved me anyway, and then you taught me to be better. I owe you more than I can ever repay. You don't owe me anything except what I already asked for. Be better going forward. Treat people with respect regardless of their role. Listen to expertise wherever you find it. That's the repayment I want." Morrison nodded. "You have my word on that." He started to leave, then turned back. "One more thing. I heard you might be getting orders for a new assignment. Something classified. Is that true?" Willow's expression closed slightly. "Where did you hear that?" "Lieutenant Sterling mentioned it. Said there was talk of a high-priority mission requiring specific expertise. Your expertise." Morrison studied her face. "If you do go, I want you to know, you've changed things here. Changed people. The K9 handlers are more confident, more respected. The operators are more open to different types of intelligence. You created real lasting change in 2 weeks. That's remarkable. Thank you, Lieutenant." After Morrison left, Willow found herself thinking about what he'd said. New orders, classified mission. She'd been expecting something like this, but that didn't make it easier to face, because new orders meant leaving the relative quiet she'd found here, leaving the training work she'd started, leaving the community she'd begun to build. She hadn't checked her secure messages in 3 days, deliberately avoiding whatever was waiting. But postponing the inevitable was cowardice, and Willow Fletcher was many things, but not a coward. That evening, she sat in her quarters with her encrypted tablet and opened her secure message queue. At the top, marked Priority Alpha Classification, was a message from DevGru Command with Colonel Cross copied. She opened it. Classified, Eyes Only 2, Staff Sergeant Willow Fletcher, Ghost 7, from DevGru Operations Command, Subject, Mission Authorization, Request, Staff Sergeant Fletcher. Intelligence sources have confirmed the survival and current location of high-value target Khalid Hassan, previously designated Target Crimson during Operation Damascene Shield, Syria 2019-21. Hassan was believed KIA during your team's final operation. New evidence indicates he survived and has reconstituted his network along the Syrian border. Hassan has indicated awareness of Ghost 7's survival and has made specific threats regarding unfinished business. SIGINT confirms he's actively seeking information on your current location and status. Due to the personal nature of Hassan's threats and your unique operational history with this target, DevGru requests your voluntary participation in a direct action mission to neutralize this threat. Mission will include full tactical support, but Hassan has demonstrated ability to evade conventional operator approaches. Your specific expertise in his patterns and psychology is deemed critical to mission success. K9 integration is authorized. Handler Rider's capabilities would be tactical asset given Hassan's known use of underground facilities and complex tunnel networks. This is a volunteer-only assignment. No negative career impact will result from declination. However, mission success probability is assessed at 47% without your participation, 78% with your participation. Response required within 72 hours. Respectfully, Capt. Richard Hollis, DevGru. Operations Command. Willow stared at the message for a long time. Target Khalid, the man who'd killed 16 members of her DevGru team, the man whose ambush had nearly killed her, the man who'd been haunting her dreams for 4 years. He was alive, and he was hunting her. She closed the tablet and looked at Ryder, who watched her with concerned eyes. He could sense her distress, could feel the tension in her body. "They want us to go after him," she said quietly. "The mission that almost killed us, the target who killed our team. They want us to finish it." Ryder's ears perked forward, alert, attentive, waiting for her decision. Willow thought about everything she'd built here, the training program, the handlers she was mentoring, the cultural change she was creating. Walking away from that to chase revenge, was that growth or regression? But it wasn't really about revenge, was it? Hassan was a legitimate threat. He'd killed American operators and was actively rebuilding his terrorist network. He was making threats against her specifically, which meant he might be a threat to anyone near her, the handlers she worked with, the team she trained. And there was another factor, closure. She'd never gotten closure on Syria. Never gotten to finish the mission. Never gotten to look Hassan in the eye and make him answer for what he'd done to her team. Maybe she needed this. Maybe they both did, her and Ryder. She pulled out her tablet again and began typing a response. Her fingers moved quickly, certainly, as if they had already made the decision before her conscious mind caught up. Response. Mission authorization request, accepted conditions. 1. K9 Handler Rider participates as primary tactical asset, not secondary support. 2. Mission planning includes K9-specific intelligence gathering and deployment protocols. 3. Handler Fletcher retains tactical veto authority regarding K9 safety parameters. 4. Upon mission completion, Handler Fletcher returns to current K9 training assignment without prejudice or pressure for permanent DevGru reassignment. Request. 48 hours to brief. K9 training replacement and ensure continuity of current programs before deployment. Ghost 7, ready for service. SSG Willow Fletcher. She sent the message before she could second-guess herself. Then she sat back, Ryder's head resting on her knee, and waited for the fear or doubt to hit. It didn't come. Instead, she felt something she hadn't felt in 4 years. Certainty. This was right. Unfinished business needed finishing. Not for revenge, but for peace. For the teammates who died. For the mission that had never been completed. For the part of herself that had been broken in Syria and never quite healed. Maybe this was how she'd finally heal. By facing the thing that had broken her and proving it couldn't break her again. Ryder whined softly, and she looked down into his dark eyes. One more mission, she told him. One more time. Then we come back here and do the work that matters. Deal? Ryder's tail thumped once against the floor. Deal. The response came back within an hour. Authorization confirmed. All conditions accepted. Report to briefing facility 0600 Thursday for mission planning. Transport arranged. Welcome back, Ghost 7. Willow closed the tablet and stood. She had 48 hours to prepare, to brief her replacement, to make sure the K9 training program would continue without her. 48 hours to get ready for the mission that had almost killed her 4 years ago. She walked to the window and looked out at the Afghan mountains silhouetted against the evening sky. Somewhere beyond those mountains, in Syria, Khalid Hassan was waiting, hunting, planning. He thought she was broken, thought Syria had destroyed her, thought she was hiding in a K9 unit because she was too damaged for real combat operations. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Willow touched the DevGru trident tattoo on her shoulder, the mark of who she'd been, who she still was under the handler uniform. Ghost 7 wasn't dead, wasn't broken. She'd just been waiting, waiting for the right mission, waiting for closure, waiting to show everyone, including herself, that choosing to serve quietly wasn't weakness. It was strength. And strength could be called on when needed most. All right, Ryder, she said quietly. Let's finish what we started. Behind her, the dog's ears pricked forward, ready, always ready, because that's what partners did. They stood together, faced threats together, and finished missions together, no matter how dangerous, no matter how personal, no matter how much it cost. The Ghost was going back to war. And this time, she wouldn't be alone. This time, she had a partner who would never doubt her, never dismiss her, never underestimate what she could do. This time, Target Khalid would learn what it meant to face Ghost 7 when she was angry, prepared, and absolutely done with being underestimated. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning.